People say the smallest things can make the biggest difference. Well, yesterday I got this car tuned by the good people over at VF Engineering. Here's what happened. I am back at VF Engineering. That is my M2 back there strapped up. How's it going? So, Nick, what are we doing to my car today?
Well, we're going to put on the dyno. We've got a two-wheel drive dyno jet, and we'll measure the power before we put the software in, the high-performance VF software. Once we've got the baseline power measurement, we'll put the tune into the car and measure the power again and see the difference.
I was wondering when that tow hook would actually come in handy. So currently the ECU is stock. We're going to run it once, see what the horsepower and torque numbers are, and then tune it, and then see what the horsepower and torque numbers are after. That way we can see exactly how much horsepower we gain from getting the tune. So here's the verdict for the stock then.
349 wheel horsepower, 391 foot-pounds of torque. It's relatively flat through here, and you've got this nasty little trough.
Unlike other cars where you can just plug it in and tune it, M cars, or specifically F chassis cars, Nick just told me they have like a security lock on the ECU, so you actually have to remove the actual ECU and remove the security lock so you'll be able to tune it and, you know, mess around with it. So that's what he's doing right now. So how many warranties have you voided in your life? Oh, wow. So I'm guessing that's the ECU?
That's it.
This is the throttle body, and it controls the air entering into the intake manifold. It goes into the intake manifold.
Distributed.
And distributed evenly between the 6 ports.
So inside those are the cylinders, obviously.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna lie, it does kind of piss me off how BMW had to use the M55 engine for an M car. It's actually pretty much the same engine. Obviously it's a little more tuned, but it's pretty much the same thing as your 335i and stuff. So I don't know how to feel about that. But I'm not gonna lie, the M55 is probably the best sounding BMW engine ever. So I can't complain about that. So fun fact, I've asked a lot of, professional drivers about the difference between a LP580, which is a rear-wheel drive Huracan, versus an all-wheel drive Huracan. I have an all-wheel drive Huracan, and me personally, I think it's a little bit faster around the canyons and even around the track because it's all-wheel drive. But I've heard some professional drivers saying that a 580, even though it has less horsepower and less grip, it's still faster around a racetrack because it doesn't have that front differential. And Nick's actually about to show us the front differential right now. Apparently that thing weighs a crap ton, and that makes the difference in making the 580 faster. So that is a front differential from a V10 R8, which is pretty much the same thing as a Huracan. Oh yeah, that thing's got some meat into it.
So that combined with the drive shafts and the center prop shaft will be the added weight when going from an LP 580 to a 610.
How much do you think this all weighs with the shafts and everything?
Probably in the region of about 150 pounds.
150 pounds, yeah. I'm having trouble just trying to lift this with one hand, so. So Nick, is there really a difference between like good tunes and then like a bad tune or something like that? High quality, bad quality?
Absolutely. Well, there's different types of tuning. Typically in the aftermarket, some of the companies are making what are called piggybacks. So they're electronic boards which will connect to some of the key sensors, the inputs, to the computer of the car, and they will influence those inputs. And then the side effects of that will be the turbos will be able to spin faster and make more power. In our opinion, ECU tuning is the purest form of making power on these cars because it's actually taking the original factory mapping, that's all the calibration data, and adjusting it in the software to create a completely integrated tune whereby all of the safety features in the vehicle, all of the integrated software systems, the functions and the tables and the logic, all continues to interact without external influences from bluffed electronic sensors.
Is there something like dangerous about getting these piggyback tunes? Like can your engine possibly even blow up?
Well, it depends. Some piggyback tunes are very effective. Some of them we've seen are adjustable. So in the hands of someone who isn't really experienced, they could adjust the calibration of the car potentially to a point where it might not be safe, and if they're using reduced octane levels, they could potentially cause detonation and longer-term potential issues.
Meanwhile, so whatever this thing right here, that's apparently his daily driver. He drives this thing everywhere, and apparently he turns his light on, so when there's traffic, everybody just moves out of this way. Right, Nick?
No, I don't.
Ow! Holy sh... I just got word that the ECU is back in and the tune is complete. Now we're gonna pull out the fans, get the car on the dyno, and see exactly how much horsepower we gain.
Here's our tune gain over stock. Boatload of torque down low, carries it all the way through. Filled in that trough nice, so now it's smooth all the way out, and it extends now to 7,200 with strong power. Relatively flat through here, and you've got this nasty little trough. Also notice how it drops off super sharp here at the end, instead of cutting here about 68 where the factory shuts off. Also
You know, they say the smallest things make the biggest difference. Some people may say that an ECU tuning is probably the cheapest way to gain more power on your car. Well, this VF engineering tune costs $1,200 to $1,300, so it's not really that cheap at all. Well, of course, there are piggyback tunes like how Nick described yesterday, which I don't really know how it works, but all you do is buy something off eBay and plug it in your OBD port, and then apparently it makes more power. Do you really want to use some eBay bullshit on your $70,000 car? I didn't think so. And even so, here's the difference between those eBay tunes and a $1,200 VF engineering tune. First and foremost, ECU tunes are designed to give you a lot of power, and this VF engineering tune does just the job. The torque increase that this simple tune gave is such a big difference, especially in the lower RPMs. If I just floor it, right now I'm in 2000. That, by the way, was second gear, and you could hear the traction control kicking in and the wheels spinning out and the car skidding out. And to be honest, this car, what it really lacked was power. It's such a great handling car, a great sounding car, but out of the box, it made something around 370 horsepower. And honestly, for someone who's used to cars that have over 600 and 700 horsepower, 370 horsepower just wasn't gonna cut it for me. And this tune perfectly balances out the power that this car really needed. It is no question that an ECU tune will give you plenty of extra horsepower, but what are the other things that make this tune so much better than the other ones? Well, an ECU tune is not all about the power. Like, for example, when this car was stock, and when I would shift between gears, when I'd go from first gear full throttle, shift to second gear, and go back on the throttle, when I was back on the gas, even a slight bit early, the traction control software would kick in so harshly and abruptly that it felt like you're just running out of gas every time you shift into the new gear. But now with this ECU tune, when I'm back on the throttle after my shifts, the throttle is just there. Like, for example, there was absolutely no lag in any of the power. And another cool thing is this feature called loud startup, and it's exactly what it sounds like. BMW M cars, for some reason when you start it sounds like a hybrid car starting up. You don't hear anything when the engine starts up, it just goes, that's the startup noise. However, after this VF engineering tune, listen to the startup noise. Finally, this car now sounds like some sort of a sports car starting up, not a Prius starting up. And I'm gonna save the best for the last. VF engineering makes this car sound like an AK-47, and I absolutely love it. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna open the valves, slide it into Sport Plus mode, open the windows. Rest in peace, headphone users. Don't be afraid, because there's a little button here that you can press to make that burbling go away, but I don't know about you, that sounds absolutely orgasmic. Some people don't like that burble, but most people, I think, do. And this takes burbling. It's not even burbling. It's just straight up AK-47. That fucking burble. It's just absolutely crazy. And I absolutely love it. I love it. And I'm gonna post a full review on this car soon, now that I spent over 5,000 miles with it. I got a little emotional on how good this car was. And I said in the review that I would take this car over some cars that cost over 200 grand. But now with this ECU Tune, I don't know. I like driving this car better than the Lamborghini. What? I never said that. Well, if some of you guys thought this was going to be a dynoing video, no, it's not. Because any tune really will give you some sort of horsepower. That's not the question here. Because this car is not about going on a drag strip and looking at your quarter-mile times, but this car is more about going to the canyons and driving. This is a true driver's car where, you know, plus or minus 20 horsepower really doesn't matter. So why did I get a $1,200 tune instead of a $200 tune? Going back to what I said earlier, these are the little features that matter. These little tiny details like the sports gauges and the burbling and the startup and then the torque coming back in. And that is a true difference between an expensive tune and a cheap tune. And you guessed it right, the expensive VF Engineering tune will probably end up giving you more horsepower and less of a chance of blowing up your actual engine. That is no question. Well, anyways, thank you guys for watching. I will be posting a full what it's like to drive and live with a BMW M2 review pretty soon. So please subscribe, like this video, and I'll see you guys next time.